Hey, AP Scholars. So now that you're starting to collect all this data, and we've been talking a lot about qualitative and quantitative data and inferential and descriptive statistics, you're going to start analyzing this data in February, right? That whole month is going to be all about your analysis and how to write this up. But today we're going to really focus on just the qualitative aspects, actually all this week, and have you think about planning out the qualitative data analysis and how you're going to organize that information inside your academic paper. And there are really 6 ways that you can organize qualitative data. So that's what we're going to focus on right now. So qualitative data, just remember, is information that you cannot organize numerically, right? Because it doesn't have numbers attached to it. Although, do remember that you can look at like the frequency of word usage, right? Like love is used 20 times. So you can quantify that depending on where you want to go with the data that you've collected. So a decision that you have to make is how to unfold your analysis in a way that makes sense to your audience, right? The order in which you present it in your academic paper is going to be paramount if you're using qualitative data. And you're going to need to decide if quantitative or qualitative information should lead your organization of your paper. If you have both, which one is more important? Because that's the one you're going to want to put first, right? So the following ideas, these 6 strategies, are going to kind of help you think about this. So first of all, think about this idea of order. That's really number 1, the order in which data appears. Are you going to provide the data to readers as it was compiled through the research method? Right? I got this, then I got this, then I got this, and so on, right? The pros to this aspect is, right, it's very systematic and it really helps the reader understand the sequence of events that happened in terms of your analysis. The problem with this one is it doesn't allow for groupings of data in a way that might help people understand your data in a deeper sense. So keep in mind, there's some pros, there's some cons, right? Number 2 is category grouping. Grouping prompt items to allow for clear illustration of method intentions. So an example, a survey or interview conducted with responses. Now, obviously, in this case, it does allow the person reading your paper to see how things are interworking with each other in your method section and in terms of what responses you got. So a lot of you might be in this category since many of you are doing surveys. The negative aspect or con is that with a large amount of responses, it can get very difficult to bulk into large categories. So if you are going to do category groupings, make sure that there's connections, right? Third idea is trend groupings. These are grouping item responses based on similarities in response rather than the item intention. So you're grouping the negative responses and positive responses to show a trend. Right? This really helps readers understand the information and it makes it really abundantly more accessible to readers. So if you're looking for trends, this might be a good way to go. The negative aspects of this is you have to do a lot of work on the front end to identify those trends, right? You're going to have to categorize things and look at those trends. It also has the tendency to create some reporter bias if you're kind of manipulating the data to fit what you want it to say. Remember, as we looked at last week, statistics can say whatever they want to say if you bend them to your will. Then, if some of you are doing like a pre-test, post-test, I know there's at least one of you doing this comparison. You're comparing specific items to this is what they knew before, and here's what they now know afterwards. So A lot of times if you have a control or experimental group, you're going to use this. But if you're doing pre and post tests to kind of compare and contrast, you might want to look at this. It obviously will show the change for the audience if you actually found one. The problem is it lacks effect if very little change actually occurred. So if it's so minute, this becomes a problem. But you could obviously describe that to the reader. So that's wave 4. Wave 5 with qualitative data is you do documentation over time, where you create a pattern of analysis where you get a snapshot here, and a snapshot here, and a snapshot here, and you show the change that happens over time, right? It guides the reader through the analysis, and typically it's always chronological in nature, and that obviously is very clear because you can see the change over time. The problem with this one, if you are going this way, is it's very time consuming, right? And if you've got like 500 pieces of data, you're going to have to spend some time really digging into that and showing this pattern of analysis over time, right? And especially in a 500-word paper. The last one is looking at thematic groupings, right? Grouping your data in a format that makes important information come to the front, but you also still want to make sure that you talk about the least important. This is obviously a great approach for secondary research as well as primary research, right? Because you're going to highlight the key pieces of items that readers need to understand. The problem is you really have to take a lot of time knowing what your data is so intimately that you can find those themes and then build them out in the analysis. It's okay to do. It's just going to be time consuming. And in all these cases, the con could be time consuming, right? Because you're analyzing data. That's why we set aside kind of the whole month of February for you to really deep into your analysis. Okay? So this week, we're going to have you really kind of think about where you might go with your qualitative data, because a lot of you are having that with words from surveys and things like that and looking for patterns. So we're going to give you some opportunities to see if you really understand this. So good luck and